When the village discovered the poor orphan, Amara was pregnant, she was cast out. The shame wasn't just the child, it was the father, the nameless madman. From the streets, as she faced her darkest hour, a fleet of black cars rolled into the village, searching for a lost man. A man with her lover's face. In the dust-blown corner of a bustling Nigerian market, where the scent of ripe mangoes mixed with the clamor of commerce, lived a ghost. Her name was Amara, an orphan whose existence was as faded as the yellow wrapper she wore every day. She moved through the crowds unseen, unheard, her worth measured only by the few coins she earned carrying goods for others. Her solitude was her shield. While other girls her age shared laughter and dreams, Amara shared her silence with the stray dogs and the quiet rhythm of her own heart. Her eyes, large and gentle, saw everything and expected nothing. They saw the cruelty of whispers and the kindness of the setting sun. And they saw him. The village had another ghost, one they actively feared. They called him Chidi, the madman. He was a man untethered from time, his mind a scattered map of a place no one else could see. He wore rags for clothes and a tangled beard for a mask. The villagers would toss insults at him like stones. The children would run, a mix of fear and cruel delight. They saw only the madness, the dirt, the otherness. They never saw the flicker of deep intelligence in his eyes during a quiet moment, or the scar above his right eyebrow that spoke of a forgotten trauma. One scorching afternoon, Amara sat beneath a baobab tree, eating her only meal, a small piece of roasted yam. She saw Chidi nearby, staring at a wall and whispering to the patterns in the mud. He looked gaunt, his ribs stark beneath his torn shirt. Without a thought, without a calculation, she broke her meal in two. She walked over to him, her bare feet silent on the hot earth. She knelt and placed one half of the yam on a clean leaf before him. He did not look at her, but his frantic whispering stopped. This became their ritual, a shared silence, a broken piece of bread, a shared cup of water. Amara, the girl who had nothing, gave what she could to the man who had even less. She spoke to him not as a madman, but as a person, telling him about her day, about the clouds, about a song she'd overheard. In these moments, fragments of another man would surface. Chidi would sometimes trace complex patterns in the dust with a stick, or utter a single, perfect word in English equilibrium, or synthesis, before the fog in his mind would roll back in. He began to look for her, a quiet anchor in his chaotic sea. One evening, a violent rainstorm lashed the village, turning the market into a river of mud. Amara huddled in her usual spot, a leaky alcove between two stalls. Chidi found her there, shivering. He pulled her deeper into the shelter, his presence a surprising warmth against the cold. In the intimacy of the storm, shielded from the judging eyes of the world, they were not the orphan and the madman. They were just a man and a woman, finding solace in the dark. A moment of profound, lonely connection passed between them, a silent understanding that would change everything. 2 months later, Amara felt a change within her, a deep, unshakable knowing. The life that the world had denied her was now growing inside her. She was filled with a terrifying, fierce joy. She was going to have a child. The secret was a fragile treasure, held close for a few precious weeks. But secrets in a village have short lives. A market woman, the sharp-tongued Mama Nkechi, noticed Amara's subtle sickness in the mornings, the protective way she held her stomach. Mama Nkechi's accusation was not a whisper, it was a roar that echoed through the entire market. The orphan is pregnant. The words were a lit torch tossed into Amara's quiet life. The crowd gathered, a circle of vultures. The next question came like a hiss. Who is the father? Amara, terrified, could not speak. But the villagers followed her gaze, her involuntary glance towards the edge of the market where Chidi sat, oblivious, watching a lizard on a wall. The realization dawned on them with a wave of disgust and outrage, a collective gasp of horror. It was one thing to be an orphan with child. It was another entirely to be carrying the child of the madman. It was an abomination. The verdict was swift and merciless. She was a disgrace. Her actions had brought a curse upon the village. They cast her out. The very people who had ignored her existence now actively worked to erase it. Amara was driven from the market, her only source of livelihood gone. She found refuge in the skeletal remains of an abandoned hut on the far outskirts of the village, a place where the wild dogs roam. Her shame was a physical weight, heavier than any load she had ever carried. Her life became a desperate struggle for two. She foraged for edible roots and begged for scraps at the furthest farms, her belly swelling with the secret life she now had to protect. She was utterly, completely alone. Yet, not entirely. Chidi, drawn by some invisible thread, found her. He could not understand her plight, but he sensed her sorrow. He would leave her strange gifts at the door of her hut, a mango of perfect ripeness, a feather of impossible blue, a flat, smooth stone. They were the treasures of his broken kingdom, offered to his queen. The months crawled by. Amara grew weaker, but her resolve hardened. She would talk to her unborn child, promising it a world of love, even if that world was only the two of them against everyone. She had accepted her fate. Her dark hour had come to stay. Then, one morning, a sound completely alien to the village pierced the air. It was the purr of powerful engines. A fleet of 3 gleaming black SUVs, coated in the dust of a long journey, rolled slowly into the village square. The villagers stared, their mouths agape. Such vehicles were things of myth. A man in a sharp, tailored suit stepped out of the lead car. His face was etched with worry and exhaustion. He looked like a man who had not slept in a year. This was Emeka. In his hand, he held a photograph. He approached the villagers, his voice polite but strained. "Have you seen this man? My brother. He has been missing for a long time." He held up the photo. It was Chidi, but it was a Chidi they had never known. Clean-shaven, smiling, with clear, intelligent eyes, dressed in an expensive suit. The scar above his right eyebrow was the only recognizable feature. Mama Nkechi was the first to speak, her voice dripping with scornful laughter. "That man, we know him. That is Chidi, the madman. He is nothing but a crazy vagrant." Emeka's face paled, a flicker of hope and horror in his eyes. "Mad? Where is he? Please, you must show me." The villagers, now buzzing with a greedy, fearful excitement, pointed towards the edge of the village, towards the abandoned hut. Emeka and his men moved quickly. The crowd followed at a distance, a wave of murmuring curiosity. They arrived at the dilapidated hut to a sight that silenced them all. There, outside the entrance, sat Amara, heavily pregnant, washing some roots in a clay bowl. Beside her, Chidi was patiently trying to weave a crown of grass, his brow furrowed in concentration. He looked up as the men approached, a flicker of fear in his eyes. "Adewale," Emeka whispered, his voice breaking. He took a step forward. Chidi Adewale scrambled back, instinctively moving to place himself between Amara and the strangers. A protective gesture from a mind that had forgotten everything but the person who had shown him kindness. Emeka stopped, holding up his hands gently. He spoke in a soft voice, explaining to the stunned onlookers. His brother, Adewale Adebayo, CEO of Adebayo Holdings, had been in a terrible car accident over a year ago. He had vanished from the hospital, suffering from severe amnesia and trauma. They had been searching every city, every village ever since. The words hit the crowd like a physical blow. The madman, the vagrant, was a billionaire, the heir to an empire. Mama Nkechi's hands flew to her mouth, her eyes wide with the catastrophic scale of her misjudgment. They looked at Amara, the outcast, the disgrace. She sat there, stunned, watching the scene unfold. She was not carrying the child of a madman. She was carrying the heir to one of the wealthiest families in the country. As Emeka tried to coax his brother, Duel's gaze remained fixed on Amara. He did not know these men in suits, but he knew her. He knew her scent, her voice, the safety she represented. He reached out and took her hand, a simple, anchoring gesture that declared his allegiance. In that moment, Amara was no longer the village outcast. She was the woman who had sheltered a lost billionaire, the one person in the entire world who had shown him compassion. Her act of kindness was not a disgrace. It was an act of grace that had saved the life of a titan. The journey back to the city was a blur for Amara. She was taken from her world of dust and hunger and placed into a world of quiet luxury and care. Adewale was immediately put under the care of the best doctors, but he refused to be far from her side. The Adebayo family, far from shunning her, treated her with a reverence that overwhelmed her. She, the poor orphan, had done what their money and power could not. She had kept their beloved Adebayo safe. She had seen the king when everyone else saw only the beggar. Abdul's recovery was slow. His memories returned in flashes, like photographs from a forgotten album. But through it all, his memory of Amara's kindness, of their shared meals and the shelter from the storm, remained the clearest of all. It was the foundation he rebuilt his mind upon. A few months later, Amara gave birth to a healthy baby boy. In the pristine hospital room, surrounded by a loving family, she looked at her son, the child born of disgrace and destiny. Adebayo, his mind clearer now than it had been in over a year, sat beside her. He looked at his son, and then at Amara, his eyes filled with a love that transcended memory and madness. "You saved me," he whispered, his voice full of emotion. "You saved me when I didn't even know who I was." The news of the story became a legend. The tale of the orphan who saw a man instead of a madman, and whose compassion was rewarded beyond imagination. Back in the village, Mama Nkechi and the others lived with the bitter taste of their judgment, a daily reminder of the treasure they had cast away. In the end, the sweetest sound was not the clinking of coins or the whispers of praise. It was the quiet truth that a single act of kindness, offered without hope of reward, is the most powerful currency in the world. Amara, the girl who started with nothing, had proven that she possessed the greatest wealth of all.